So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today, we have a special guest, Derek Sabori. He is with a company called the Underswell, as well as another company called Kozm. So, Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Wendy. Glad to be here.
No problem. And please don't adjust your volume. I still have my cold, so my voice is going to crack on and off through the interview. But I wanted to talk to you today about fast fashion, sustainability, and why it matters, because this is your background. This is what you work in.
Definitely. Yeah, and I might even push back a little, even just say fashion in general. Fashion, the apparel industry, all of it. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
huge industry. It plays a big role in all of our lives. And I like to look at and teach sustainability through the lens of the apparel industry because it's something that affects all of us. We all either love it, rely on it, use it, work in it, appreciate it, shop for it, whatever. So definitely, and it has a huge impact at sort of every stage of its life cycle, and that's definitely what I like to touch on and talk to people about.
Absolutely. And one of the things, when you talk about all fashion, so I grew up, watching CNN Style with Elsa Clench. So my mom had us raised on this stuff, but people don't seem to understand is the cutting of fabric, the dyeing of fabric, the manufacturing of fabric, how things get transported around the world. It's a huge carbon footprint.
Mm.
There's a lot of waste generated, and also the toxic dyes that are used. So you jumped into this industry basically teaching brands, teaching corporations how to not be so wasteful or toxic.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, in a ways, for me, I've been in the apparel industry for like 25 years now. And when I got into it, this was not a conversation that we were having. Nobody had talked to me about it. My career was not built on this idea of responsible business, sustainability, or doing things ethically or doing it the right way, or even understanding what our footprint was. It wasn't until a good 10 years or so into my career that I had this sort of spark and an understanding and people really, showing me that there were new ways, there were different ways that we could source materials and to start to understand what those smells meant, that typically meant that there was something toxic in the air, and start to
Yeah.
understand the impacts that all of our decisions had on workers, on the environment, on communities, and our global footprint. So I think it's really important. And the way I talk to brands and talk to students is just this idea that we need to be looking at the entire, like you said, the entire value chain and sort of looking at it in life cycle thinking is what I like to call it. So that goes from cradle to grave, not only just to gate to the point in which we sell and send our products out to market, but how do our consumers use them? What do they do with them after they're done? How do we capture those resources? Is that even possible? And put them back into the stream. So yes, there are toxicity issues, so chemical issues. There are waste issues. There are water issues. There are emissions issues. There's deforestation associated with the fashion industry. You name it. There are human rights issues. There's forced labor. There's fair wages issues. There's safety concerns. I mean, you can just keep checking off the list. And this is why I love this space so much because there's so much to tackle, but it also reminds us in sort of a framework that this is how we have to look at sustainability in terms of every stage along the entire value chain and look at it in these sort of columns. I like to think of them. Okay, tier 4, raw materials. What are the impacts? What are the environmental and social impacts? Well, are we talking about cotton? Are we talking about polyester? Are we talking about hemp? Are we talking about flax? Are we talking about nylon? Each of them have all this list of environmental and social issues that we have to understand and look at, and then go to the next tier, and then to the next tier, and to the next. So it really complicates the issue, and really, we end up extrapolating it out to be this really complex issue that needs to be tackled with a lot of eyes and hands on it.
I'm glad you brought up the cycle. So most people think, well, I'll just buy my sneakers, at the store and that's it, right?
Yep.
They're not thinking that the cotton has to be grown, which is actually cotton industry is pretty awful to our soils. Our soils are heavily depleted from the cotton industry. And then that cotton gets manufactured into canvas somewhere else. So that's a GHG footprint of transporting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's cut, then it's dyed, then it's sewn together, shipped somewhere else, put together. Then you've got the rubber sole that's usually synthetic, not great for the environment. Then that rubber sole is attached and then shipped somewhere else, and then we buy it. So there's this huge chain of events that happens before it even ends up in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wear it for a couple of years, and then you say, oh, I don't like it anymore. I'm just going to toss it in the landfill. And then that's that full cycle that is extremely wasteful, damaging. And we need to break that vicious cycle, for lack of a better term. We need to really think about what are we doing? are, you know, a lot of companies are now using natural rubber in sneakers, which is fantastic, as long as it's done sustainably. We're not over harvesting, because
Mm-hmm.
that can be a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And yeah, so with Underswell, and I love what you guys do. I mean, you are training people, you're mentoring people, you offer, I think it's a membership course or a class, correct?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways, and that is our whole approach. My whole approach is really to educate people and empower brands, empower people, because as you sort of pointed out, there is no perfect answer. There is no one answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no one page for any of this. It just sort of, and I have a favorite answer that I give to everybody. It's on my coffee mug here. It's like, it depends. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, well, is cotton better than nylon? Is recycled better? It's like, well, it depends. Well, where was the cotton grown? How was it grown? How were farmers treated? How were they paid? What were your responsible purchasing practices? What did the rest of the value chain look like? How about soil health? How about emissions? You know, there's all these different things. And each one of them, you're always going to have pros and cons and goods and trade. We're going to have trade offs at every stage. So it gets really complicated really quickly. And my approach with the Underswell is to help people, brands, be comfortable in that chaos and kind of get to the point where we're no longer looking for, like, I just need the light switch. I just need to switch it on so I can say we're sustainable. It doesn't work that way. There
Wow.
are so many dials and so many levers, and the biggest part of our footprint, especially in the apparel industry and with most products, is the further back upstream we go. That's where the impacts are, right? Where we sourced our
Absolutely.
materials, how we sourced them, the cotton that you mentioned, because of the inputs, the impacts on soil, the impacts on biodiversity, fossil fuel based fertilizers, et cetera, transportation. Lion's share of the footprint is back there. So really we have to tackle that. But at the same time, every stage matters. So I work with brands in what I call these brand cohorts, where I bring groups of brands together and I treat them like a classroom, because I come from a college teaching background as well. And they go together, they go through a course that I developed. So I can have people go through, it's a 24 lecture course, 24 hours of lecture material based on sustainability in the apparel industry. They go through the course. I meet with them every week and answer questions. We talk through it and handle all the issues that are coming up in every day in their daily business. I do one-on-one coaching around that same content, and then yes, have a membership portal where people can go in and in a community setting get access to a lot of that recorded information and have a place where they can stay updated on events, things they need to know about, resources, Q&A, questions and things with me and other experts that I'll be bringing in. So yeah, lots of different ways to work together.
I love the fact you have the events, because networking with people and sharing ideas is really the only way we're going to get through this. You know,
Yep.
speaking in a vacuum doesn't work. Um, with respect to the sustainability, do you talk much about social justice and, you know, the workers and living wages?
Always. And what's great is a really important thing to me is because this happened to me too, right? I always say, don't tell anybody. But years ago, when I started off as a sustainability professional, I even once said, well, I handle environmental sustainability. This was years ago. And so my whole, a whole focus that I have now is to make sure that people, when they leave their time with me, understand that sustainability is, yes, it's about the environment, but first and foremost, it is about people. And so it's about environmental justice, social justice, human rights. Nobody is taking care of the environment if their basic needs are not met, if they are not living in a safe and meaningful, situation in their life. Then they're not taking care of, they're not worried about deforestation. They're not worried about emissions that may or may not be affecting them immediately. So yes, it all ties together. And so absolutely, I don't let them leave without making sure that we are looking at environmental, social issues, governance as well, and then
Yeah.
balancing that out with business and your brand and your approach. I really come at it from a business standpoint. I love products, I love brands just as much as the next person. So, and I also think they play a huge role in the solutions for us. So to me, I'm a fan of getting over there and working with people inside of those brands, because they have a big voice, they have an influence, they speak to us in our daily lives. So the more we get them to change, the more it's NGOs, policymakers, brands, us consumers, all of us are playing a part. But yeah, that's sort of my approach. So short answer is yes, I always make sure that people understand that sustainability is about people first.
Now, one of the biggest hurdles that I get pushback when I talk about sustainability, especially with, you know, social justice, environmental justice, is it's expensive. Oh, I
Mm.
can't afford it. The initial cost is more, but on the back end, you do actually save money. when you start implementing some of these measures?
So, yes, in parts of the value chain, absolutely, right? If we're cutting down, if we're becoming more efficient and cutting down on waste, great. We're using less energy, less, less bills, less water, less bills. Sourcing regenerative cotton, sourcing, organic cotton in smaller batches, paying fair wages, living wages. These are things though that just have costs.
Yeah.
Audits, compliance, certifications, meeting standards, cost. So I do get that. There are added costs, but at the same time, the long-term effects of that for your brand are avoiding risk as we go down, creating loyalty in the marketplace, not differentiating yourself now, but I think at some point it will just become a way that you have to be doing business to keep up.
Yes.
Um, and also, as policy comes into place, we're seeing it throughout Europe and in other parts of the world. We're hearing chatter of it now. Your brand is going to want to be ready for all of that. It's just the right thing to do. And I think we have to look at sustainability also, though, because in some cases it just will be more expensive until it is fully scaled up, until volume reaches that critical mass. But I also think brands have to do a good job of just not adding on sustainability, but making room for it, in the sort of
Yeah.
the pie. So if you've got, we know we have room for marketing and PR and athletes and ambassadors and whatever else and buildings, et cetera, and travel. Well, guess what? Some of those things might have to shrink a little to make room for a bigger sustainability wedge, to make room for some of those other things that just might cost more because it's just a better way of doing business. It's not the old way of doing business. It's a new and better way. And sometimes there are costs that come with it. And sometimes, yeah, absolutely. A lot of times where you see an ROI on them in a short amount of time.
Quick question. Is it fair to say that, because we all got in the past 20 years or so, we all got very used to cheap clothing
Mm-hmm.
and it falls apart. It does not last. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, I am aging myself. I mean, I had stuff that lasted a good 20 years. I
Yep.
mean, it was built like iron. Are we going back to that perhaps? Making
I think
things
so. And definitely a part of sustainability programs and strategies, there's a perfect example of a no cost, if you will, approach to a sustainability program. Just make products that last and
yes.
tell your customer that you did so and make sure that they use them appropriately. Make them, even if you were to just use conventionally sourced materials and do it in an old fashioned way, if they're holding on to it for 20 years, passing it down to other people and making sure it never goes to landfill, well, there's something to be said for that than even, maybe an organic cotton t-shirt that was worn for 3 months.
Yeah.
This is like, it depends which is better. But yes, the answer is we are going back to that. You're seeing a lot of brands focus on durability, longevity, getting consumers out of that mindset. And these are two different camps, right? There is still, you can obviously go into the world and realize, wow, we still have a lot of work to do. People are addicted to fast fashion. They love the sale. They can't get enough. They want more and more. But then you can also go into you turn the corner and realize, hey, some brands are actually speaking a whole new language and slowing it down. It's this sort of slow fashion movement and reminding customers that, hey, you don't need a new print, a new color, a new this or that every single month.
Yes.
Buy well, buy good, hang on to it, bring it back. We'll repair it, we'll fix it, pass it on, reuse it. We will sell it in a secondhand market that we're offering now. So this shift towards, yes, a more circular economy, which includes all of those things, of course, is definitely happening. It's slow, but yeah, it's happening, surely.
I honestly believe in quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There
me
is
too.
such a thing as knowing how much is enough. And we've
Exactly.
all drifted from that. We're all like, more. It's like, no, you have what you need. Hold on to it. Good quality. So as we wrap up, how do people find you with the Underswell? How can they get involved? How can they get you to coach them?
Yeah, so you go to the underswell.com. And if you're in all my offerings are there. You can learn more about the brand cohorts that I do, the one-on-one coaching, the courses that I'm selling, or the membership community, as I mentioned. So all of it's there at the Underswell. You can also go check out our my brand, the Kozm. It's called Kozm, but the website is the Kozm, Kozm, and that is sort of my approach at taking what I teach and putting it into practice. So that's a certified B Corp brand. Nothing in there is without a sustainability story, fully traceable, transparent supply chain. We have what's called the open book business model. So you can see where everything was made, how it was made, every item, how much it cost. We share everything with you. So it's just a really good exercise for me to kind of put into the marketplace the same things that I'm teaching and talking to people about.
I love it. And it's important to keep learning. Everyone, I mean, no one is good enough to stop learning. We all have to keep learning. Everything's evolving.
Wendy,
And
that is while you take a break there. Sorry, real quick. I was gonna say that is the hashtag I use all the time, and that is really part of my approach. Is just like keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. And even me, as a guide, as a coach, as an instructor, I'm always learning, and I'm always meeting new people. And we have to just, again, these topics weren't taught to us in school, through our curriculum, through our careers. So we're all just trying to figure this out. I just happen to have a benefit of having done it for now many years. I'm just trying to pass on as much as I can. But yes, we all have to keep learning. That's really what's going to change things.
I love it. And the brands need to start understanding the consumer's moving on. The consumer wants sustainability. They are waking up and saying, this isn't right. We're destroying our planet. So please, people, hunt down Derek, find the Underswell, hire him. He's a great coach. He's a great person. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will
Thanks,
definitely
Wendy.
be seeing more of you. Guys, have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.